Mr. Clerk, are we ready to start?
We are ready to start the meeting.
Okay. All right, with that, we'll begin. Welcome. I'd like to call the July 2nd, 2020 West Sacramento Planning Commission meeting to order. We are meeting via teleconference this evening pursuant to Governor's Executive Order N2920, by which members of the Planning Commission and staff are participating via live video conference to reduce the spread of the COVID-19 virus. Members of the public have been invited to watch the meeting via wave cable on our local channel 20 or streaming online through the city's website. Tonight's agenda and all agenda item materials are available on the city's website on the Planning Commission page. All public comments submitted by 5 p.m. via email to our Planning Commission clerk are available for consideration and are posted on the city website, along with the agenda and the link to the live streaming video of this meeting, so that all planning commissioners and community members can see the complete text and submittal information. During the meeting, the planning commissioner clerk will note the commenters for each item. Okay. With that, we are going to move on with tonight's agenda. First up is general administration function. Part 1, presentations by the public on matters not on the agenda, but within the jurisdiction of the public. Mr. Clerk, are there any requests? Well, there wouldn't be a request to speak, but are there any general comments for the Planning Commission this time?
There are no general comments from the Planning Commission at this time.
All right, thank you. Moving on to Part 1B, correspondence and staff communication from the Planning Commissioner Secretary, Mr. Tilley.
Yes, thank you, Chair Liebig. There's just 2 items of note I'd like to point out for the Commission. This past Monday evening, the Mayor's Commission on Climate Change completed its 18-month work on a carbon neutral plan for Sacramento and West Sacramento. And so that's been a big effort. We had a seat on there with Councilman Ledesma, and myself and other city staff have been supporting that effort. So that is a big, big occasion for the region. The final report's on the Local Government Commission's website, and I encourage everyone to take a gander at that. And when you have an opportunity, I think we will be probably getting some high-level direction from the City Council about sort of where to go now that that work is done. But I would fully expect that aspects of it would be needed to come before the Planning Commission here over the coming months. This was a very big achievement for both cities, and I for one was happy to have been able to contribute to that. And I know Commissioner Austin participated in some aspects of it as well. And then just as a housekeeping note, you may see the name Elijah Ortega on the call tonight. He is with the city's Economic Development and Housing group. So he's on the call tonight should there be any questions regarding the later item on your agenda about appointing some Planning Commission emissaries to the Housing Commission. So that concludes my remarks at this time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Tilley. And welcome, Elijah. Moving on to General Administration Part C, disclosure of ex parte communication. At this time, Planning Commissioners should disclose any communications they've had on items on the agenda. Mr. Sternfels.
I did speak to a member of the public on item 2 on our agenda.
Okay, zoning updates. Anyone else?
Or sorry, item 1, I apologize.
Item 1 is the meeting minutes.
Oh, right, sorry, then it was item 2. It's
Okay.
listed as item 1 on the agenda.
It is marked as item 1, yeah.
Oh, you're right. It's a double item 1. Okay. With that, we will move on to Part D, selection of the Planning Commission subcommittee for the housing element update. Mr. Tilley, would you like to give a kind of a brief intro for that? Or would you like me to?
I'm happy to do that if you'd like. And I'd like to have Elijah weigh in a little bit too.
Okay.
But it's housing element time for our region, which is part of our general plan. And that only comes around every 8 years. So we have commenced that work, and what's unique about the housing element is it's the only part of our general plan that requires direct state approval. So it sometimes can take on a little bit of life of its own, but At this time, I'd like to let Elijah sort of elaborate about what our overall, game plan is for the housing element, and also why we're asking for some planning commission representation to the housing commission, which I recognize is a little bit unusual for us at the planning commission. So Elijah, do you would like to pick up that?
Thank you, David. Good evening, commissioners. My name is Elijah Ortega. I'm a staffer in the Economic Development and Housing Department. I'm also the project lead on the city's housing element update. So kind of just a brief overview. As David said, this is the one part of the general plan that is going to need certification and review from the state directly. It's a shorter planning period. It's an 8-year planning period compared to the general plan's 20-year period. And so we're operating, as many other things are in the city right now, on kind of a reduced timeline, given some setbacks that we had regarding the COVID-19 crisis. So the deadline that we have from the state for getting our housing elements adopted is May 31st of next year. So we were able to kick off our housing elements update on May 13th of this year. And we've got a consultant on board, and we're starting the community engagement and public outreach portion of the housing element update now. But I believe that David asked me to join tonight to ask a few of you planning commissioners to act as ambassadors, essentially, on our workshop that we're going to be holding next month for the Economic Development and Housing Commission. And I think the idea is to have a small group of you attend the workshop, get some information, and report back to your other fellow commissioners. So that way, when we come back to the Planning Commission with another full workshop, you at least have some background knowledge beforehand.
And I think, Elijah, when you mean attend, we also mean participate, in any discussion, at the Housing Commission. And the real reason why we're doing this is because we do have a bit of an expedited schedule. And so we'd like to have at least a few planning commissioners be part of the Housing Commission's process, without, stealing any of their thunder, so that when it does come back to the Planning Commission, which will need to take a formal action on the housing element before it goes off to council, we wanted to be able to have at least a few commissioners that could participate at the housing level, and then can help translate some of that back to the full commission when this matter comes to the Planning Commission formally. May 31st next year sounds kind of far away, but we have to submit a draft in, get comments, revisions. Some of that has to go back to council. So, and then obviously toward the end of the holiday year, holidays, some meetings and things go a little off calendar sometimes. So really the deadline is not nearly as far away as it may seem. So I think we would definitely, I think we would all benefit from having some Planning Commission participation with the Housing Commission for probably, Elijah, what are we thinking about? 2-3 meetings maybe?
Yes, at least 2.
Okay.
Elijah, you mentioned a meeting next month. Do you have a date for that?
So we are working on getting that scheduled, but we're targeting the latter end of next month. And that will be the first initial workshop that we would ask the small group of you to attend. Like I said, at the latter end of August.
Latter end of August, okay. Okay, well, thank you, Elijah and David. As opposed to what it says on the agenda, I actually think it would be good for us to have just three planning commissioners versus 2 and an alternate, just for consistency purposes. Also, I would like to get our vice chair on this subcommittee, one, because of her background in housing, and two, I think it would just be good to have the vice chair on this one. I am not volunteering to be on that. I would like to have at least one of our newer planning commissioners on this subcommittee. This isn't an obligation, but I'm just throwing it out there. It would be nice if Commissioner Berliner or Commissioner Saban would like to be on this commission. I would like to make sure that there's a spot for one of you and maybe one additional more senior commissioner. So that's what's kind of going on in my head. I know it was a little bit odd that we're now asking for volunteers streaming online. I wish we could do this offline, but are there any volunteers to be on
As
this?
folks are contemplating, I'll just make a couple of remarks. So I'm really excited that we're moving forward with this process. And I think that there's a lot of value in having both a planning commission and the commission that's really looking at specifically housing working together. So I'm very excited to be nominated, and I would love to participate in this. As you all know, I worked in housing for 10 years, and land use and housing particularly are definitely big areas of focus for me in my professional kind of research hat. So I'm excited about that. And for those who are contemplating it, I do think that it won't be a large commitment of time, but just making sure that you do have the commitment, not just to attend the meetings, but to do your homework, because you will likely need to kind of get up to speed and do some reading in advance. So I won't say more than the quantity of work that you have for the staff report, but it will be sort of learning a different housing language if that's not something that you're familiar with. And I also think that it's an important thing for you to think about when we think about community engagement. If we can't be with others in person, just thinking through some kind of level of sophistication of ways to engage with our community partners, I think is going to be really important. So, and I'm happy to kind of think through that. And I'm sure that the city attorney can help you understand how to navigate any conversations I might be having with stakeholders around this topic. So just pausing there, I just wanted to give a couple of remarks for folks who are thinking about this.
Thank you, Ms. Dawson, for volunteering. So, Ms. Berliner, I see that you have your hand up. Is that a volunteer, or would you like to make a statement?
No, that's to volunteer.
Okay.
Do I
We don't need 3. I just thought it would be good to have a mix. I can throw some names out there, but
So you got that I wanted to volunteer, right?
yes.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
I'll meet again.
Thank you so much.
So Chair, I'm
So that's-
happy to jump into if we need a third person. I'd be more than happy to participate.
Okay, that's 3. Anybody else would like to be considered?
I'll give it a shot just to throw my hat in the ring. But
Okay,
I don't want to create. I don't want to create a competition to participate where somebody who's feeling very passionate about being involved feels somehow that it's. Yeah, I don't want to make it a competition. But I'm happy to help and contribute as long as it's not infringing on anyone else's desire to contribute as well.
Thank you for that. There are so many opportunities for us to engage with our community, and there are lots of boards we can be on and other ways to engage with our community. So this is just one aspect. If you feel like you want more to do, I'm sure there are things that we can plug some people into, some of the planning commissioners into. So,
and just in clarification, this would by no way will replace any full consideration of the housing element by the full planning commission as well. So everyone on the planning commission will have full opportunity to weigh in on everything before it goes to council.
Okay. With that, we have a lot of talent on this planning commission. So I'm sure no matter who we send, it's going to come back and do great things on that commission. You won't be voting members, but it'll be helpful for us in the future. And As David said, this is going to be not rushed. It needs to be timely. We'll most likely need to get through this before the end of the year. So with that, I would just like to go ahead and make appointments. Appoint Vice Chair Austin. Thank you for volunteering. Commissioner Berliner, thank you for volunteering. And Commissioner Sternfeld. Commissioner Leonard, thank you so much for volunteering. I'm just going to take them in order. I think would be great on it. Just going to go in order on that one now. So,
no problem.
Okay. With that, we will move on to the consent agenda. So this is consideration and approval of the minutes from the June 18th, 2020 commission meeting. Are there any questions, comments? If not, we'll just seek a motion on this one.
It was pretty straightforward, but I think I had a question. The very beginning that comments needed to be submitted by May 21st. Was that a typo from a different one? Because I think, didn't people have it until 5 o'clock the day of?
Yeah, it would have been the day of.
Okay, so I'll move to approve minutes, striking from the first paragraph, May 21st, and inserting June 18th.
Okay, moved by Vice Chair Austin.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Berliner. We need to go with a roll call vote. So I'm going to ask Mr. Clerk to run through that.
Commissioner Berliner.
Aye.
Commissioner Leonard.
Aye.
Commissioner Sablon. Commissioner Sablon.
Aye.
Commissioner Strumfeld.
Aye.
Commissioner Austin.
Aye.
Commissioner Castillo.
Aye.
Commissioner Liebig.
Aye. Okay, thank you. Moving on to the regular agenda. On the agenda, it's also number 1, but on everything online, it is number 2. This is the public hearing regarding the proposed minor changes to West Sacramento Municipal Code Title 17 zoning. And again, I'm going to ask Mr. Clerk before we get into this, whether or not we have received any public comments on this item.
There are no public comments on this item.
All right, thank you. Okay, with that, Ms. Allen, I'll pass it over to you.
Good evening, Chair Liebig and members of the commission. This item involves proposed zoning code changes to 4 areas of the zoning code. The first of those items involves short-term rentals. You most likely know that is Airbnb or a similar organization. In 2019, when we updated the zoning ordinance, we did add a category for short-term rentals and allowed them in all the residential zones and the agriculture zone. However, since then, it's come to our attention that they're not allowed in any of the mixed-use zones, which also allow housing. And so because of that, we are proposing to add them to the mixed-use zones that do allow housing, which would be the Central Business District, mixed-use neighborhood commercial, mixed-use commercial, and the waterfront zone. The next item we're looking at changing has to do with campaign signs. Prior to the zoning ordinance update, there was a section in the zoning ordinance pertaining to campaign signs. It revolved around the amount of time campaign signs can be erected before and after a campaign, along with some language having to do with the size of the signs. It was an error that we left that out of the SOMP when we updated it, and so we're proposing to put that language back in. The third item we're looking at updating has to do with square footage for wall-mounted signs. We're looking at changing the language slightly on this item due to the fact we're finding that applicants are having a bit of trouble following what we thought were clear instructions when we put them in the zoning ordinance, but we found that our language is a bit ambiguous, and so we have tidied it up a little bit in an attempt to make our wishes known in terms of how they should calculate the square footage, which is 1 square foot assigned per for each linear foot of frontage that they have. And the last item we're looking at updating has to do with retail sales in home occupations. The purpose of the home occupation, one of the tenets of it is that there really shouldn't be any indication, if you look at the house, that there's a business being conducted there since it's in a residential district. We're try hard not to impact our residential districts. And so we are adding stronger language that details the fact that retail businesses conducted out of home occupations can't have customers coming to and from their homes to order things, to pick up merchandise, etc. And so that concludes my discussion of what we're looking to change. I'm happy to answer any questions at this time. Mr. Tilley's here as well. So that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Allen. We're going to go ahead and open the public hearing, although there are no requests to speak. And I will go ahead and close the public hearing, bring it back to questions from the commission and deliberation. So I do see a question from Mr. Sternfels.
Thank you, Chair. A couple questions for staff. First is, I noticed several of these items impact our business operating regulations. And so I was wondering if there was any outreach to the chamber or the business community on any of these changes, and what the feedback was from them.
We did not reach out to the chamber on these, and we haven't had any feedback during the noticing period.
Okay, thank you. Second question, in regards to the campaign signs in commercial and industrial zones, the proposed language in little letter B, is that language meant to be specific to an individual business or an individual parcel? And the reason I'm bringing this up is I know some of our commercial and industrial businesses own multiple parcels adjacent to one another. And I want to make sure that the language is clear and kind of what we're aiming for.
We were going for individual parcel on those.
Do we think we need to be clear on that in the proposed language?
David,
I'm specifically thinking about a couple.
Yeah, I agree that the past practice and proposed continued practice has been to look at those signs on a per parcel basis rather than on a, on, like, say, if you have a multi-tenant type commercial setting. So if the commission feels that needs to be further clarified, we can certainly be, certainly would be open to that, because that is our intent, to be parcel based.
Great. I'll leave that for us to discuss in a moment. I did have one more question, and it's around the home occupations language. And I think I'm struggling with it a bit because the world has changed so much in the last few months. And I know a lot of individuals who are out of work have gone to home-based businesses as a way to generate income and stay in their homes. And a lot of those are based on kind of retail resale models. And so I'm struggling with whether or not, I totally understand that we shouldn't have folks like displaying things in their windows for sale. But if a purchase has already been made from someone, I'm having a hard time understanding the difference between the customer coming to pick that up directly versus having a UPS truck or other mail truck come in to pick it up and then deliver it, and if there's really a big difference between one versus the other.
And
Well,
I have a question or concern. Can I chime in before you respond, Kathy?
sure, go ahead, Bernadette.
And I had the same thought, Commissioner Sternfeld. So I'll share too that I don't really have any comments or questions on the other items. There's just the home-based business ones, for this very same reason that Commissioner Sternfeld indicated. And I'll just say, I mean, there are 2 local businesses that I've patronized in which I've purchased things and picked them up at their homes. And, you know, I think that whether it's a short-term or a long-term thing, I think we really need to look at that. I will flag that the language itself does not explicitly specify just picking up a purchase that has already been made, what we call a porch pickup in the biz. And so I think that we can probably leave that out and leave it up for zoning administrator interpretation. But I just want to explore what are some of our options to address, at least in this particular setting. I personally am supportive of people being able to sell things from their home without making it a storefront.
Well, the reason we're bringing this forward and tightening up the language is, in all honesty, if we get a complaint about a home-based business, it usually centers around the foot traffic that business has. If they're having people coming and going on a regular basis. And so we were trying to make that language more clear. It's always been the policy that home-based businesses are generally supposed to be something along the lines of a home office where people are not coming. That isn't to say that they can't have sales, but the intent was always that it was, say, along the lines of internet-based sales where people are buying stuff and not coming to get it.
And there's one other wrinkle here that comes into play when you have a bona fide business in your residence, and when it comes to customer traffic. The building code was amended 3, 4, or 5 years ago that defined this concept of a commercial facility in a home-based business. And what that particular provision requires is if you're going to have a commercial facility, i.e. a home-based business in your residence, and you're going to be having customers come to you, that portion of your home that is dedicated to that business needs to be accessible to persons with disabilities. And that can be very challenging to accomplish in a typical single family home. And when we mean accessible, that could even mean having an accessible parking space on the street in front of one's house to be able to accommodate any persons with disabilities that may be coming to patronize your home-based business. So that is something that we advise all of our home occupation business license applicants of their responsibilities in that regard. We do not compel them to make those necessary adaptations to their homes, but that's been a change that's come in the last couple of years that's definitely made home-based businesses with any type of customer traffic a lot more challenging potentially for those individuals hosting those businesses if they're home, which most homes are certainly not fully accessible to persons with disabilities. So for the most part, with the porch pickup and all that, it works, and it's rarely, it becomes a problem. I think part of our goal on this one was because under the home occupation sentence, there is a direct prohibition of retail sales, but we get a lot of people doing technically retail sales, but it's all online. So the customer traffic is really the issue here. People can do all the retail they want online and nobody would probably ever know the difference. But if you do have some customer traffic, that's when a home-based business does get a little more visible and occasionally can be somewhat problematic in a neighborhood. So I think we were trying to get there to try and recognize the types of businesses that people can run out of their homes these days versus what may have been possible even 5 or 10 years ago. But still trying to find a balance between that new economy, but then also just residential character and desire in neighborhoods.
Thanks, David. I think one of the pieces that particularly sticks out to me is that we're allowing it for the cottage food industry, which I'm assuming is because state law allows it.
Correct.
But we're not allowing it for other industries. And so if I'm baking goods, it's cool. But if I'm reselling costume jewelry, it's not okay. And to me, that's where I feel like we're creating a bit of a disparity between business types that people choose to go into that, despite all those other points you mentioned, which I think are totally relevant, feels unfair.
Yeah, and even in the cottage food thing, what that really allowed people to do was to prepare certain types of foods at home in a residential kitchen situation versus having to go to a full-blown commercial kitchen, commissary kind of model. It's still fairly limited what people can do, but it allowed them to do it in there and prepare those foods at home. It doesn't necessarily mean that people have to go to that home to purchase said food. We have had people doing this where they go to Bright Park on a full day of soccer, and they've sold some of the most delicious tamales you've ever had. So it's really more about the customer traffic at the home than anything else.
I understand that that's the goal. I'm not sure the way the language is written gives equal clarity around that goal to all business types.
So I'll ask the question because I interpreted, I think, as Commissioner Austin did, that porch pickups are okay. It doesn't explicitly say they're not. That was my interpretation, because you can purchase via mail or telephone, and it only excludes coming into view and purchase. So do we need to be explicit, or is it okay left fuzzy? Fuzzy is usually not good for us. So
That's kind of what I'm getting at, and it sounds like, and I'm wondering if that's something that we could consider, and if it's too sticky, then maybe we can pull this one out and kind of rework the language and then move forward the other three. I know the other commissioners haven't had a chance to weigh in yet, but I'll just flag that. The one option that we have is to move forward with the three. At least the two of us who've spoken sound like there may not be an aversion to doing that, and then we can move to this home retail sales. But I do think I agree with you, Shirley. Like I don't explicitly see that, but one way to get around that where it is still gray is to leave something up for zoning administrator approval. And the reason I offer that, and that may not be a good one, a city attorney can weigh in on that, but one of the reasons I'm thinking about that is we could be in this particular situation with shelter in place for many months to come. And I want to make sure that if people are doing retail sales from their home, where that's a more viable option than, for example, these people typically would be going to fairs and festivals. They do these pop-ups, which pop-ups are not happening anymore in general. And so that's what I'm trying to say is, like, if we leave it to zoning administrator approval, zoning administrator may choose to interpret it in one way under one set of circumstances, and then differently when these home-based retail settings could then, if they had an outlet for retail, then they would then be discouraged, or it wouldn't be allowed for more of the kind of picking up the purchases at the home-based business.
So an interim solution to this may be to allow zoning administrator interpretation at this point, and to direct staff to revisit this and perhaps clarify this over the next few months, so that once this current circumstance ends or changes, that would allow the kind of situation that you were just describing, Commissioner Austin, that by then we have some more clear language on this issue in place. But in the meantime, we could go forward with the language that's being proposed and rely on zoning administrator interpretation to allow for the kind of porch pickup that was described earlier.
okay, I'm seeing head nods. Are there other comments, or if you do have any specific language, that's always encouraged for consideration?
Yeah, I concur with city attorney's, previous comment about this particular facet of this proposal tonight. Is something we could work on a little further. If the commission were comfortable potentially moving on the remaining items.
I will flag, Commissioner Sternfels, I shared your concern when you asked to what extent there was outreach to the business community. And I think I jumped over you before we got I think we got a response. I don't know if that was sufficient or if you would like to delay this discussion to get some more direct input from the business community.
It wasn't sufficient in terms of my comfort level moving forward tonight. These probably seem like small issues, but we're taking them in a very piecemeal approach, and I think the circumstances make them no longer small. So I feel like some outreach to the chamber and the business community about some of these changes to at least say we did it should be like a checkbox we always check. So I'm uncomfortable moving forward without that box being checked tonight. And that kind of applies to some of the other items that impact the businesses too. But to me, those are much more cut and dry and clear. This one in particular, though, I have a lot of consternation moving on. And I also wanted to ask, because I know in our last commission meeting, there was a question about a definition in the zoning code that there was some commitment to bring some updates to. And so I was also wondering if that had been considered and if staff had enough time to put that in this. It's not in tonight's agenda item, obviously, but I'm wondering why that one was not included in this item tonight.
Yeah, that was that other one from last time is something where we still have in the hopper. Didn't get it complete for tonight's meeting, but it's something that we still have on our list.
So I know Commissioner Austin and I have spoken a lot. I'm interested in hearing other commissioners' thoughts.
Right, so opening it back up, there are several items. We can take it one item at a time if that would be the preference. At this point, it doesn't sound like I'm hearing a lot of comments overall, so I think I can help categorize them for a summary. In other words, floor is open. If there are comments on any parts of these. Okay, I don't, Ms. Saban, is that your hand or not? No, okay. See, if this was an auction, you would have just bought some. No. I do have a couple of clarifying questions and maybe one suggestion. So regarding wall signs, and thank you staff for bringing this back up. Just a couple of questions. There's a couple of sub bullet points, and I know that the intent here is to make this a little bit easier to follow, but I'm actually, as a result, now struggling to follow part of this. So there's a description that the size of the sign is based on the property frontage and a 20% limit on the total area of the wall. And then the next bullet, without an introduction, says agricultural retail zones 20 square feet. There's no introduction to what that means. And so I think it would be helpful to have a clarifying comment, something like a summary of the sign limitations are as follows, or just something very simple, but that transition is odd to me.
We can add some little clarifying language to that.
And I'm not asking, I guess, for a change in it. It's just for clarification for ease of understanding by people coming in applying for sign permits. If we want, we can come back to that one. I'm okay moving that forward. It's just that is a little there's a little hang up on that one. So I have a second question on this one. The maximum number of signs, and this is again under wall signs, it's one per building frontage or tenant space. And can you describe the scenario if you have a mid-rise or a high-rise building, what this looks like? are we talking about the same square footage of sign, or is it the signage is limited for the building overall and then partitioned out per tenant space? How does that work for a mid-rise or a high-rise building?
Those types of buildings usually during their development incorporate some sort of sign program that augments what's allowed for that specific business. These standards are more interpreted for like individual businesses or businesses, say in a shopping center where you have several businesses in a row and each tenant gets to use their facade frontage to calculate their signage.
Yeah, the goal, especially in a multi-tenant situation, is not let the first tenant in the door gobble up all the allowable sign area. So we try to apportion that based on their building frontage. And as I recall, when we did the ZOMP, and we did put some additional things in there for high-rise buildings specifically. I know that's been brought up at the commission a couple of times, over the years. So there is something, I don't recall the exact language, but there is something, we put something in deliberately, as we are now starting to see more mid and high-rise, buildings, and we'll continue to see more going into the future. So the goal here, there was a bit of confusing language in there between street frontage and building frontage. And so we were trying to clarify that when you're talking about your signage, wall mounted signage, that's based on your building frontage, not your street frontage. Street frontage comes into play when people want to do like a monument sign. So in this way, it's based on your front building facade. Whereas if you have a 50 feet of frontage, then you get like 50 feet of square footage of sign that you can put on your building in theory. So this has been kind of how we have done it over the years. It seems to work in terms of being able to apportion signage. It doesn't appear to have been too strict or too liberal in terms of how much sign area businesses can have. And we're also just fortunately, just the way the market is, we're seeing an even just better signage, people putting in a lot more channel letter signs and halo lit, no more of the cans that we used to. And we've long gotten rid of the pole signs and things that are of the past. So we're doing a lot better on signage now based on some of the things that the commission has incorporated in the zoning code, but then also just the way some of the, just the state of the art, so to speak, is for signage for our business, in the businesses out there.
So you bring up a good point. So mid-rise, high-rise buildings are covered under a different section that we're not looking at tonight. Is that what I'm hearing? And I'm sorry, I know we did this a while ago. I can't recall.
Yeah, that is true. I was gonna try to peruse that real quick, since I have a computer here where I normally don't during our regular meetings.
And the reason I was asking that question is there's a limit to signage higher than the second story of a building for a wall mount sign in this section. And so I don't know if we're now introducing a conflict, and do we have to define other types of buildings? If you would like to look that up, I know Ms. Austin has a question, I think, on this topic.
I do, yeah, to have Mr. Tilley multitask. So my question then is, existing structures, are they going to be grandfathered in? Because I think that is going to make a difference. I mean, it's not exactly the same, but it reminds me a lot of the fence discussion that we had that generated a lot of energy, where if people were being asked to, like kind of, non-conforming, existing non-conforming, clarifying that there was not the expectation that one would need to replace the existing signage, because I think that makes it a very different situation. And in rereading at least the staff report, I didn't see an indication of that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. As a rule, if we change a rule, and that put somebody out of compliance, then they, assuming they were legal in the beginning, then they would be non-conforming. And in theory, if that they could keep that sign or that fence forever, until such time as they may want to make changes to it. And at that time, they would need to bring it into conformance, with current standards. I did identify we do have a whole specific section for the high-rise building identification signs. That's a specific provision that we put in with the ZOMP. It's not one we've used too much yet because we haven't seen a new high-rise yet, but other than what CalSTRS has under construction now. But there is a new provision for them, and this high-rise is defined as really being buildings of 4 stories or more. So there is a provision in there and a specific graphic how we would do it in a high-rise situation, 4 stories or more.
Okay, so those are split out separately. To circle back, I remember signs coming down. All the pole signs in the town are now down. And on Jefferson, there's that psychic business right on the right-hand side. They used to have a can sign, and that is now all individual letters. That came before the commission. So I'm not sure what the legal non-conforming use, how legal non-conforming use comes in on this one, since in the past, the precedent is that they have to actually update.
Well, because that was because we had a specific amortization program that was adopted and approved. That actually started in 1993 and didn't come to roost until 2008. But that was a specific amortization program where those businesses were allowed to keep those signs for that duration to sort of get enough return on those investments. So that was a unique situation where we had an actual amortization. We do not have any current amortization provisions.
Okay. Those are all of my question and comments. There's a couple odd things that I'm not sure how this would apply, but I think you answered my question. Existing businesses, for example, flags. IKEA Court has that roundabout with a bunch of flags, which would not be permitted under this ordinance.
No, they don't, but IKEA has specific sign provisions in Plan Development 45 that are applicable in that shopping center that are for that shopping center and that particular plan development.
Okay. I'm just taking notes. So
I didn't raise my hand, but here I am doing it manually. So let me propose, at a minimum, I think it sounds like there is not, there probably wouldn't be challenges to trying to move forward the election sign one, which arguably we really should be providing some guidance by August, because that's about when people will start putting up signs. I think it's like September or something like that. So I would recommend suggesting moving forward with that one. I also wonder if the first recommended provision, the Airbnb one, is also when we could move forward. And I do feel like we need to give some more thought, and I would like to get feedback directly or indirectly from the business community on the 3rd and 4th items. So just wanted to, see, does that sound like a recommendation that people would generally be supportive of?
You think we need support from the business community on defining the linear frontage of a building for the area of a sign?
Not so I should clarify. So not support, but I would like to get feedback from the business community whether there's some unintended consequences that we're not thinking about. So because often they will think of, oh well, this is something that we were contemplating, but it doesn't. What we're contemplating for some future business does not match this one, or that there might be some cost thing that some sort of logistic manner that we weren't thinking of. So I'd like them to get a chance to look over, because this is a situation where typically people are noticed within their community because it's located, some project is being proposed near their home or their place of business. And this is, while it's generally noticed, it wasn't specifically targeted.
Okay. I think that's fine. I'm always in favor of getting the business community input. I do have concerns if we're even contemplating the property frontage versus a building frontage, because that could greatly increase the size of a sign that would dwarf, the building size. So I would have concerns over that. So, but if we want to get business input, Mr. Tilley, is there a time sensitivity on this one?
Not specifically. I think, the like Miss Austin said, the campaign sign one has certainly got the most temporal relationship to it. I think that we could work, if we like to split things up the way it was suggested, that's something we could certainly work with. If we need to spend a little more time on the sign one and the HOMOC one and with the chamber. So that might be a good approach for tonight.
Okay. So what I've heard so far is I know reiterating everything that Miss Austin just did. Moving forward the campaign signs. I'm sorry, I can't find the other one. The
Short-term rentals.
Thank you. Short-term rentals.
Rentals and campaign signs.
And then holding back the home occupation retail sales for to clarify the porch pickups, but in the interim allow for zoning administration interpretation. And then the second one would be for signs to provide some clarifying language for sub bullets under section 1 under wall.
Oh, there it is.
So E1, the sub bullets. So add some clarifying language for the sub bullets, and then regarding business outreach on this item. So that's what I'm hearing. Complicated of a motion.
So Chair, I would also like to ask that if we do go that direction and have support for it, that we also ask that the item from the previous meeting come back with the other two. I'm a little worried we're doing exactly what we said we wouldn't do after we did zoning ordinance modernization, which is start cherry picking all these little sections and doing a little thing here and a little thing there. And knowing how much time and energy we put into that, I want to make sure that we do these things in groups if we have to do them and do them as infrequently as possible.
Can somebody remind me what that last item was that we asked to come back? I honestly can't remember.
Was it the parking lot matter where we brought the zoning administrative interpretation last time, where the definition of a parking lot referred to for fee?
That's correct, I believe. Commissioner Sablon can confirm.
Yes, so I know that was an area that was a matter Commissioner Sablon brought up at our previous meeting.
Okay, thank you. I agree with Mr. Sternfels. At the same time, it looks like we've got two of these that we can move forward. I absolutely want to give people the opportunity to bring something back if we want to. So I'm just seeking a motion at this point.
I mean, I'm happy to make the motion. I also didn't want to. I wanted to make sure that Commissioner Sternfels had a chance to weigh in, but I'll take a stab at it. And I think my proposal might be just slightly modified from yours, Chair Liebig. So I'm going to recommend moving staff recommendation on the modifications to the short-term rentals and the campaign signs, and then request. So just be clear, like moving those staff recommendation for those two, and then the remaining two, which are wall-mounted signs and home retail sales, as well as a previously discussed modification to parking, to return to the commission for consideration after members of the business community have been noticed, at least the Chamber of Commerce. It feels like it's getting very long.
No, that's right. Mr. Boer, I would recommend we split this into 2 motions. How do you feel about that?
I think that works. I also think that you can, as far as the portions you'd like to have come back, just make that direction to staff. I don't think you have to formally move that portion.
Yeah.
You can make your motion just to approve and move forward with the 2 items that you would like to move forward and direct staff to come back with you for the rest.
Thank you, that helps. And that's what I was trying to get at is I don't want to give specific guidance on those because I do want feedback, and you have the recording and staff can make a note of what some of the discussion around the third and fourth changes might entail. So I'll make a motion to move staff recommendation for short-term rentals and campaign signs and request that staff return at a future date collectively with wall-mounted signs, retail sales, and parking.
Okay, moved by Vice Chair Austin.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Sternfels. I'm going to turn it back to Mr. Clerk for a roll call vote.
Commissioner Sternfeld,
Aye.
Commissioner Castillo,
It looks like we just lost Commissioner Castillo.
Commissioner Leonard,
Aye.
Commissioner Berliner,
Aye.
Commissioner Austin,
Aye.
Commissioner Sablon,
Aye.
Chair Liebig.
Aye. Okay, thank you. So with that, we move forward to 2 of the sections, and we'll see the other 2 sections come back, preferably with the parking lot clarification. So, all right. With that, that takes us to, I'm sorry, there's a lot of pieces of paper on my desktop here. So with that, we move to general administration function part 2, informal discussion. Ms. Austin.
I'm struggling to unmute myself. Sorry, multitasking. I just wanted to say, Mr. Tilley talked about the work of the Mayor's Commission on Climate Change. I do definitely want to commend folks who contributed a lot of time. We talked about how thousands of hours were contributed to that effort. And David Tilley's put, in addition to his normal day-to-day job, presented at every meeting, or at least every meeting that I either attended or tuned into. And so he and his team put in a lot of work. So I just want to acknowledge the work that you did for that. I think that's about it.
Great. Thank you. Okay, with that, I will seek a motion to adjourn, and unlike a regular meeting, we'll vote on it here.
I motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Moved by Commissioner Berliner. We're not going to go home, folks.
I'll second.
Second.
Thank you. Seconded by Vice Chair Austin. Roll call vote, please. This part
Commissioner Sablon,
Aye.
Commissioner Berliner,
Aye.
Commissioner Austin,
Aye.
Commissioner Strumfeld,
Aye.
Commissioner Leonard,
Aye.
Chair Liebig.
Aye. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, staff.
I'll vote aye as well.
Commissioner Castillo.
Thanks.
Another successful meeting. And next meeting, Mr. Tilley, do you know when that would be?
It will be in 2 weeks from tonight.
2 weeks. All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Okay. Bye, everyone. Happy 4th.